Hello, everyone. Um, so I am going to be kind of giving my prediction on what I think is going to be going on with UDNA. So, obviously, I am very much anticipating this release. I think if you're going for the flagship tier, it'll be a great release. I think it'll be great. Um, Now, mid tier, low tier, and intro. I'm hoping this is wrong. I am really hoping that these are not accurate. Um, because yeah, if they are, that is going to be uh a little rough. And I'll get into why in just a second. So obviously the flagship tier, it's going to have 96 CUs, which is the same as the XTX. Is it going to have 12,000 cores? I don't think so. I think it'll probably have it'll probably be the same as the X. Or well, they'll probably say shader count will probably be 6122 or 6144. I mean, so with the let's see, let's look at the 9070 XT real quick. Um, Compute units we have 64, right? Shading units we have 4096. Okay. Um, and you know, pretty much no issue right there. Um, Obviously the XT is a pretty good GPU. It comes pretty close to the XTX in in some games. Some games it's further behind. It kind of depends on the way that the game hits the GPU, whether it's whether it really benefits from that extra cache that the XTX has, the way that the chiplet on the die. Um, but in some games it can come really close to the XTX, and it's a very good GPU. Um, so yeah, this core number right here very misleading, very misleading, because you actually have to divide this by 2. So 5120 divided by 2, that is 20. Let me get my calculator out real quick. Let's see, 5120 divided by 2, 2,560. So this is going to more than likely mean 2,560 shading units versus the 9070 XT, which has 4,096 shading units. So with this, you'd have to multiply this number by 2 to have like an apples to apples comparison with what they're saying here. Um, so and to give a very brief explanation as to what's going on with this, the way that this worked. So NVIDIA, when they came out with their 30 series, they came out with like the dual issue shader or whatever, and that is why the 3090 has like 10,000 cores and everything, which isn't actually like real. You have to divide those by 2, and that's like the actual number of like shaders or whatever on the GPU. But because it's dual issue per shader or whatever, they multiply it by 2. So if AMD did the same thing, then the XTX would actually have 12,288 cores. And which kind of explains why the XTX is a little bit faster than the 4080, which has like right at 10,000 cores, and often beats it. So yeah, that's just a brief explanation, and why it's also slower than the 4090, because the 4090 has more overall cores, by quite a bit. So with the flagship tier, obviously it's going to be. I'm using ChatGPT for a real quick comparison because I don't feel like doing it in my head. 96. Let's see, percent difference from 96 to 64. Right, it was 96. Yeah. So let's see, right at about 40% difference. So obviously there are probably going to be, we're looking at DDR7 memory, right? So we probably can add, a good probably 15 to 20% to this number. So the flagship tier compared to a 9070 XT, assuming there's no actual like core differences, right? Like they're using the same node, doesn't really increase IPC uplift, which it probably will. Like they will have an IPC uplift, I'm sure. So you could really probably say this is more like a 45% performance improvement. And then with the DDR7, you can probably up that to like 65 or 45, sorry, 55 or maybe 60% difference. Considering IPC uplift and the fact that we're moving to GDDR7 memory, which is, let's see, let's do 50-90% performance difference between 9070 XT. So probably going to be, okay, so raster 20 to 40% faster, which I don't know if that's actually, so it's 5090 is normally going to probably be about 50% faster than the 9070 XT, 40 to 50%. So if we're looking at this raw data right here, the flagship tier for AMD's UDNA will 100% be, no doubt, be faster than a 4090. There's really no doubt. Will it be faster than a 5090? If the numbers add up, then it'll at least come close. It should at least come close. If we consider the 9070 XT, how far behind it is versus or how far ahead the 5090 is versus the 9070 XT, and then how far ahead the new UDNA card should be, just based off of the overall CU count increase, right? Or the compute unit from 96 to 64, and then we can assume they're going to have some architectural improvements, generally IPC uplift, and like I said, GDDR7 memory, which in and of itself, it's kind of, is it going to, we could probably say like 10 to 15% uplift in average FPS and probably improved 1% lows, stuff like that. What does it, will it actually yield that much of a performance improvement? We'll have to see. But what I'm saying is that you could probably assume that the flagship tier GPU is going to be about 50% faster than the 9070 XT. Maybe 60%, but in my opinion, a realistic kind of middle of the road figure would be 50% improvement. And hopefully better than that, depending on how much better the architecture improves. Because remember, they are bringing in their like server side or whatever. They're like merging, right? A unified architecture, as they say. Now here we go with mid tier. Yikes. So we're going down to 40 CUs, which is significantly less than the 9070 XT. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's probably going to be at least 20% slower. So 9070 XT is going to be, definitely is not going to split down the middle. It'll probably be closer to this mid-tier card, but it won't quite be, it pretty much it does cut that in half, but you got to remember that GDDR7 memory is probably going to make a pretty good difference. Yeah, so it'll probably be closer to the mid-tier card than the flagship tier, and because clearly what AMD is trying to do is, I'm really hoping they're going to slot a card in the middle here. But a reason why they might not do that is because the 9070 XT might already be slotted in the middle here, and they might not intend to actually discontinue it or slow down production. It might kind of be grouped up in UDNA. So if you want a slightly a slightly slower card, which honestly I would even go as far as to say I'd bet you the 9070 would probably be about as fast, maybe a little bit faster than this mid-tier card. Um, but we'll see. We'll have to see. Like I said, that GDDR7, it kind of depends on how much of a performance improvement that brings and the IPC uplift. But I can promise you right now, this is definitely going to be significantly slower, significantly more slow than a 9070 XT, and probably slower than a 9070. Not by much. I feel like the 9070 and this mid tier, if this is accurate, like I said, this is all, you know. But now in ray trace, this will probably be much better in ray tracing, right? Because they're going for crazy ray tracing improvements this gen. So like if you're big into ray tracing, it might make more sense for you to get this mid tier GPU, right? But you don't have a ton of money to spend on the flagship, which will probably be 1,000, if not 1,200, maybe even 1,300, depending on how fast it is. Because if we get if we get a card that's between a 4090 and a 5090, people are going to flock to it, right? I guarantee it. And if it's the closer it is to a 5090, the more in demand it will be. Yeah, because people are chasing those frames. Now, this card right here, low tier, whew. Yeah, this is going to be targeting, you know, maybe 1440p. 1440p low settings? No, I'm just saying. Probably 1440p medium to high settings. Yeah, it kind of depends on, let's see. Do any other cards, let's see. Does AMD have any cards with 24 CUs out right now? Because I don't know how many CUs the 9060 XT got to be more than that, right? Okay, well the 9060 XT has 32 CUs, so 9060 has 28. So we're talking about less than that. We're talking about 24. Because at 32 you're looking at 8 more CUs than this low tier GPU. Obviously, once again, it might keep. I don't know if these lower tier GPUs are going to have GDDR7. If they do, obviously that'll yield a performance improvement. But yeah, as this stands right here, I would say it's probably this low tier is probably going to be. I can't imagine it being that much faster than a 9060 XT. I really don't think it's going to be. It's either going to be right on par or a little bit slower, because that CU count probably matters more than just strict IPC uplift. Now it does depend, right? But I will say that where the 9070 XT seems to fall behind the XTX is at 4K, like higher resolutions, where the GPU is like really being hounded, right? Like very heavy scenes. That's where the XT seems to kind of fall behind, because the XTX just simply has more shaders processing, you know, more shaders. That's kind of where like the pure CU / shader count shows, is in those really hard to render scenes, very high, 4K high resolution scenes. And that's why the XT is kind of like, it's kind of like that bridge. Like you can play at 4K, but you're probably gonna have to turn down some settings. And it's a very good 1440p card, right? You're gonna be able to max all your settings out. Probably will have a GPU bottleneck in most places, but it's gonna be like a pretty much overkill for 1440p. But then it's not at the same time, it's not fast enough to have a high refresh rate 4K experience either. So it's kind of at that awkward middle ground that even the XTX is kind of in, because sometimes, you can't, in some of these games at 4K, even with the XTX, you can't just max out the settings. You might have to turn down, obviously ray tracing, that's a no-brainer. But, sometimes I'll find myself turning down some shadows, just because, shadows is ridiculously intensive. So, but anyways, yeah, so the 9060 XT, I can't really imagine this being that much faster than that. And then this entry tier, yikes. Yeah, I don't even know. I wouldn't, if this is true, I would not, unless this is like a $200 GPU, I would not even look at this one. Not even, yeah, no. it just it's not worth the money. Yeah, in my opinion, this is going to be super slow. Now this is like, you know, 1080p type of gaming, which in my opinion at this point, considering how cheap 1440p monitors are and how cheap you can generally get a 1440p GPU nowadays, um, I mean, I legitimately say you're better off getting like a used 3080 or something like that, than buying this, because this is just this is going to become e-waste, as they call it, because um, what you're going to find is that as you continue to game and like this and that, and you know you're probably going to end up wanting to upgrade relatively soon. You're going to start seeing, oh god, you know, look at these 4K, look at these really nice 1440p monitors. I really want to do that. You're going to buy that 1440p monitor, hook it up to this GPU, and you're going to be like, why are my games running at 60 FPS? You know, and sorry, but nowadays 60 FPS just kind of it's kind of hard to look at. You know, I can't lie. Especially when your main input is a mouse, you can feel the you know, that's why people go crazy about these frames, is because when you're using a mouse to play video games, um, you can feel every little bit of hitching, everything like that. So if you have a low frame rate, you're gonna feel it. Um, yeah. So if you want to get UDNA, I recommend that, you know, this entry tier, probably just need to go ahead and skip that. Save up to at least get, if you're like kind of new, right? If you watch this video right when UDNA is coming out, at least save some money, get this low tier, because then you could probably get a you know, a little 1440p monitor and have, you know, a pretty good experience. Now I really recommend, if you know, if you have a little bit more budget, this GPU will probably be right at about, I would say, I really hope this is no more than like $500. Um, yeah, I really hope that this is no more than $500, because I don't think, like I said, I really, the 9070 XT is probably going to be faster, and probably by quite a bit, because I can't imagine they create, you know, they're able to bridge the gap with that you know, that many less shaders, let's just say, with 2000, right, with because this is going to have 2000, what was it, 2060 something, 2560 cores, versus the 9070 XT's 4096. I'm sorry, IPC uplift is not going to bridge that. I just don't think it will, um and that is possibly why they don't even have a little GPU right here that splits the difference, because the 9070 XT might fill that gap right there. And then the 9060 XT might actually fill the gap right here, right in between the mid tier and the low tier. So that hopefully means that that'll drive price down. If the 9070 XT is significantly faster than this, then hopefully this is no more than $500, right? And you get a pretty nice performing GPU for like 1440p. Now, this is definitely not going to be a 4K card. I can guarantee you that. This is not going to be, if you're trying to be 4K for high refresh rate, you're going to have to get that flagship. Now the flagship, I think it's going to be great. I think the flagship is going to be like amazing. I think it's going to be, do I think it's going to be as fast as 5090? I think it's possible, with that GDDR7 memory. And as y'all could see, the CU difference between the 9070 XT, and they were really able to get a good increase on the on RDNA 4 versus RDNA 3, as you can see, because like, you know, 9070 XT does match the XTX in a lot of games, but so yeah, I mean, when you look at this, right, 40% difference, 96 compared to 64, which was okay, well that was the comparison between, oh wait, no, that was the comparison between the 9068. That's right. So you're looking at a 40% improvement right there, just in CU count. Now, like we're probably, like I said, we're probably realistically looking at like a 45% to 50% improvement in performance, which, if it matches up, should match about a 5090. And we're going generally based off of actual numbers. So, like, I definitely would not be surprised if AMD's next flagship does match a 5090. Do I think it will match a 6090? Um, Actually, maybe. And the reason why I say that is because NVIDIA might not actually up like CUDA core count. Now, I could be wrong about that. They may once again up the size of the die from, they're pretty much at the max size. I think the max is set, they were at 750 with the 5090, and now so the max is 850. They may just go balls to the wall, get that 850 millimeter square die, and yeah, and call it a day with the 6090, because that's pretty much with the way that NVIDIA architecture is, you know, just is made. That's kind of the only way that they're able to scale up with performance, besides like node improvements. Because I guess the 6090 will have a better node, so it should be able to pull less power. But when it comes and have a slightly smaller die, but they're kind of running into limits on how big they can make the actual die. So they're gonna have to come up with some new. They want to make faster GPUs. They're gonna have to come up with some innovative solutions to bypass that bridge. Um, and so yeah, I do think that the flagship tier will probably match a 5090. It might be a little bit slower, but it will definitely be far faster, I think, than a 4090, just based off of CU count. It's going to be using GDDR7, um, AMD, AMD's RDNA and UDNA, or what it was, CDNA and RDNA merged to make UDNA. So you got pretty much twice the manpower working on the same type of thing. Um, so I think they are going to come out with some really good stuff. Now this low tier in the entry tier, kind of disappointed. Kind of disappointed. Now obviously we're gonna have to see where these slot. It kind of depends on how much improvement the GDDR7 is or brings, and IPC uplift, because like we saw with RDNA 4, that it does make a difference. Um, the only thing I see, the issue I see with this is I think this will probably be about as fast as a 9060 XT, um, with IPC improvements in GDDR7. So they're going to be competing against each other. So what I could see them doing is phasing out the 9060 XT, replacing it with this card, but then keeping the higher tier 9070 XT, slotting it in right here. Um, Oh, actually, now that I thought about it, no, the 9070 XT would be slotted right here, and the 9070 might. Well, let's look up the 9070. How many CUs does the 9070 have? That's let's see, how many. Well, or not will. Does the. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay, well, here we go. 9070, 56. Okay, 56 versus 64. So it kind of depends on how these scale. If this is slower than this card, which is kind of hard to imagine with 40 CUs, just saying, it'll probably, that the 9070 will probably stay slotted right here, and the 9070 XT right here. But if it's faster, then that'll be competing with this mid tier. So they might just get rid of the 9072 and keep the 9070 XT. Um, hmm. So it could go two ways: 9070 XT, 9060 XT, 9070 XT, and or 9070. But we'll just have to see, I suppose, when it comes to that. But yeah, I know this flagship tier is gonna go crazy. Mid tier will probably be pretty good, but I think most enthusiasts just aren't even looking at that. And then from low tier to entry, I like what am I looking at? Not ideal. And if either of these cards come with 8 gigabytes of memory, DOA, just DOA. Do not consider an 8 gigabyte low tier or entry tier card. No, just don't even think about it. Not at all. So yeah, honestly, if you're just now, I would just, even if you're new to building a PC, I'd stay away from the entry tier. It's just not going to be a fast GPU, and you're gonna want something faster pretty quickly. This low tier depends. If you have a 1080p monitor, you probably will be happy with it. But the moment you look at your friend's 4K or 1440p monitor with settings cranked to ultra, you're gonna be wishing you got that mid tier. So, it just kind of depends on how these actually end up playing out. Like I said, IPC uplift and how much the GDDR7 is actually able to increase performance. So yeah, this flagship tier that's really the one that's interesting by far. Mid tier and all these are kind of a little underwhelming, to say the least. Now, like I said though, when it comes to ray tracing, I'm sure all these cards are gonna spank RDNA 4, because they're looking at like what 2 times performance increase when it comes to ray tracing. So that's gonna be huge. Yeah, that's my prediction. I think the flagship is gonna be close to a 5090, might be a little bit slower, which I'm fine with, right? I don't necessarily think that I think they would, if they came out with this flagship tier, it's even slotted right between a 4090 and 5090, like right in the middle, and it's like 1200 or 1000, which is crazy, by the way. That's still really expensive. But if they slotted in that price point, and if they went crazy with 900, people they wouldn't be able to keep these on shelves, right? Like, because at the end of the day, people care about frames more than they care about anything else. And well, okay, I take it back. People care about money more than they care about anything else. So if they see something that almost competes with a 5090, and it's $3,000 less expensive, what do you think they're going to buy? They're not going to be thinking about it. NVIDIA, that is for sure. It's going to be a no-brainer. It's going to be a complete no-brainer. So I think out of all the generations that have came out from AMD, this is probably going to be the one that they're really going to bring, people like to say AMD never likes to miss an opportunity, but don't be, AMD has made some weird choices, right? They made some odd choices when it comes to, FSR 4. Don't get me wrong, with that Int 8 version, you know what I'm talking about? Come on. They've made some wrong choices, but when it comes to making a GPU, they know that they want to compete with NVIDIA, right? Like they want to, at least they want to be in the game. Because they don't want to be the underdog forever, right? Like of course their goal is to eventually beat and surpass NVIDIA. That is, obviously when you're in competition, that's your goal, is to be better than your competition. So, are they going to beat NVIDIA? I don't know. But I know they're probably going to come close, and at the very least, the price to performance is going to go through the roof with this next generation. Let's hope so, at least. So yeah, that's my prediction. Flagship is at least going to be, it's going to definitely be much faster than a 4090. It's probably going to come close to a 5090, but might not surpass a 5090. Mid tier, low tier, yikes. Entry tier, even more yikes. So yeah, that's pretty much my input. That is my, I'm prophesizing what will happen. So hopefully y'all found this informative. Yeah, and I'll see y'all in the next one. See ya.